Hey guys, Johnny here, and today I have the Monkey Blunt system. I recently did an unveiling of this on the Nitro Planes channel, but today I've got the Monkey Blunt system, and I'm going to show you guys how to quickly put it together and attach it to your pop wing. I've got the Monkey Blunt system all spread out here in my box for the pop wing, so let me go ahead and get started. Alright, move on now to the servos. How I like to do my servos in the pop wing is simply install the servos and then cut a channel underneath. So let me go ahead and walk you guys through that. See if you guys can see that here. Alright, so I've got my hot glue gun because I'm going to hot glue my servos into place. What I'll do here is I have the two wing halves and I have them upside down. I'm going to take my flat blade and I'm just going to cut a line. Just make sure I remember if this goes in that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a line from the back corner here, parallel to the carbon fiber spar, very shallow, right to the first bay here. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this one. Remember, this line doesn't need to be very deep because you're just going to basically fit the servos into it. So, oh, another thing I wanted to mention is I went ahead and extended my servos. All I did was take a male-to-male jumper and I just cut it in half and soldered the ends to this. The colors don't match up, but the wires do the same thing. As you'll notice, one of my wires is a little bit longer than the other. That's because I plan to put one of my receiver in one of the bays on one of the sides. So I want to make sure it reaches across the Monkey Blunt system. So I'll go ahead and, at this point it doesn't really matter because I don't have my setup yet. So what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and drop my servo in and just kind of dry fit it in there. Get the wires ready to go. Then I'm going to pop it back out. Put a little bit of hot glue right here. And do the same for the other side. And push my servo down. And that should be pretty sufficient as the servo fits nice and snug in there. And that extra little bit of glue just kind of holds it into place nice and securely. Then I'll flip it over and just work my wire into that little channel that we just cut out. Alright, so that's in there nice and tight. As you can see, there is a carbon fiber spar that's going to come in through here, so I made sure to avoid that spar because included in the Monkey Blunt system is one of these spars, and that spar is actually going to fit right into this groove. So I wanted to make sure that I avoid that spar, so just be mindful of that. Alright, so I've got one side done. Let's go ahead and pop the servo in there and do the other side. Alright, so that's all set up and done in there now. And we've got our two wing halves and our servos installed. Now you're going to go back to the hardware that was included with your pop wing. And you'll have the little control horns that you're going to use. Also included in your kit is these wooden plates. These are used initially to glue down, and then you can screw the servos down into. I find that I don't really need them, so I just kind of avoid them altogether. So you'll have these little clevises that come into your kit, and you want to make sure that the clevis fits in the hole prior to. I know on my particular model it does not. It actually fits. Actually, excuse me, you want to make sure your control rods that are also included in your kit, you want to make sure those fit nice and snug, and it is going to be a pretty tight fit. There's that one, and we'll go ahead and put the other one in the opposite fashion. Alright, as you can see, we have a right and a left. So then we're going to move over to our servo arms. and I just use the one that goes straight across. At this point, it doesn't really matter about servo centering because we can do that later, but just make sure that the servo arm is nice and flush. And what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and just kind of line it up. Just do a quick eyeball fitting of it. And I usually try to find a common marker to try to place this as close to the front as possible. However, you have to remember you have your hinge here, so you don't want to cut down into your hinge. So what I'll usually do is line up the hole right above the hinge, line it up with this nice and straight, and I'll just kind of push it in a little bit so I know where it's at. And then I'll take my blade, give myself a little slit, take my hot glue, give myself a little bead, and shove this in there. You want to make sure that the back part sits nice and flat. And you want to make sure that the control horn sits upright as well. So I'll give that a second to dry. Alright, so we've got that on there. Giving that a second to dry. Next, I'm going to make sure that these fit into the holes of the control horn. The easiest way to do it is either drill it out, or what I like to do is I take a lighter usually, and I'll heat up whatever's going in there. But in this case, since I'm going to use the screw, I'm just going to grab a drill bit real quick, drill these out, and then place these onto the control horn, put the clevises on the control horn, and put the screws and the washers in there, get that all nice and tight. And I'm going to go ahead and put the other side on as well, get my control surfaces moving, and we'll be right back. Alright guys, I'm back here. I've got my servos set up in here. I've got them attached to my servo tester right now. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and disconnect the control horns off of the servos because I don't know what situation they're in. When I first fire them up, I don't want them moving to too extreme of angles. So let's get the servo powered on. Put it about center, and I'll go ahead and attach the servo arms. One thing I do want to mention is there are some small screws under here that hold the control horn into place. I strongly suggest once you get your system all dialed in, put a little bit of Loctite on there before you tighten everything down, because these screws will come loose. Alright, whoops. Alright, here we go. So I've got these all set up, and we've got movement. Servos are kind of chattering a little bit because the elevons aren't completely broken in yet. And before you tighten down this screw, I would suggest you take it off and give the elevons a little bit of, exercise them a little bit, make sure you flex them, and then you can go ahead and pop them back into place. I'm going to go ahead and get everything hunkered down and tied down and everything, and move on to the next part of the build. But there you go. Got my elevons going. And now we'll go ahead and start moving on to the monkey blunt system attaching to the pop wing. Alright guys, moving on to the next part of the build, which is going to be attaching the monkey blunt system to the actual pop wings. So let's get you guys down in here.